Jingle bells, Batman smells, Robin Lane. Oh, fun. Hello, welcome to Android Weekly. This is RICKY, the Android guy. Alright guys, so let's get started with today's articles. What do we have today? Well, war were declared. Actually, war is not declared. War is pretty much over. According to Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google, he has said that Android is winning the war against Apple. He said that it's a huge platform change. It's on the scale of what Microsoft was versus Apple in the computer wars, and it's a pretty clear now who's winning. And this is pretty obvious because Android has a much bigger piece of the pie compared to Apple. And while it's not perfect control, it's still being controlled well. And that's the main thing that he was talking about. It can never be perfect control because the whole premise of Android is that it is open source, and so it's always kind of interesting where that will go. If it will be more control or less control, and which way it'll go. But I think that Android has found a good balance. Speaking of Android success over Apple, and even with Apple now, Google Maps returned to the iPhone, and Apple users rejoiced like no other. And this brought up a couple of things. For one, they finally have good turn-by-turn navigation that won't get you lost or thrown off a bridge. Which, I'm sure iOS users appreciate. I'm sure no one liked going over a bridge. I'm sure that wasn't, the finest point about Apple Maps. However, Google Maps for iOS got 10 million downloads in less than 2 days. That, needless to say, is very, very impressive. Apple users really, really loved it, and I mean, it's just really impressive. 10 million downloads within less than 48 hours is pretty impressive, and that's what Apple Maps brought so much to spare that the Google Maps really just made it amazing. Now, the flip side of this was that Apple execs were pretty upset overall. A lot of people close to Apple execs said that they were highly upset because, think about it this way. Apple came out and we're making our own maps, and they're going to be great. They're going to have a fly view, and they're going to have all these different cool, exciting new things and everything like that. And, they did all that, and it was a mess. They couldn't make a good map to save themselves, and it was just so bad. There was so much public backlash. Everywhere you went, people were making fun of Apple Maps because they were just terrible. They were terrible. There was nothing that could save them. And then here comes, while Apple's trying to fix these maps, here comes Google to the rescue in a sense. And people rejoice. They rejoice so much they download 10 million of these in less than 48 hours. That is amazing in itself, and people are seeing that Google is doing things better than Apple. And again, this really translates to Google's strategy. Look, we'll even be on your OS, because once people see how good our products are, they will eventually come to our system. And that's become very true. A lot of people come to Android because not only is iOS limited, but they love the Google apps. They love Gmail. They love Google Maps. They love Google Search. All of these things that just make iPhone so good is provided by Google. YouTube, all of these things are all Google, so they only work better on Android. And that's one thing that people really, really liked. Speaking of Google and their developing, now Google did develop, for Apple, but what about Windows? Well, in a new article, Google said that they are not planning to build out a bunch of Windows apps for Windows 8. And it's because the users aren't there. They have said that users for Windows 8 just aren't really there, so they don't feel that they really need to develop for it at this time. If users do, of course, increase, then they will, of course, make apps for it. But the main thing is Windows 8, you can still use Chrome just the way you normally do, and then Chrome has a lot more apps than Windows 8 does. So, a lot of people, they just download the Chrome app for Windows 8, and then you have all the apps of Chrome, and then you're done. Actually, the funny part about that is Chrome has more games than Windows 8 does. Lol, lol, lol. Follow, lol, lol. But yeah, so I think it's really interesting, and it is a double-edged sword of Windows 8, because, you know, it's the whole, if you build it, they will come, but, you know, as long as there's no apps, there will be not, you know, a huge influx of users. But people aren't developing apps if there's not an influx of users. So it's kind of like, this is the task that Windows has to figure out, because they're not making headway because of this problem. And finally, and no one was more happy about this than me, RICKY the Android guy, because I was waiting for it forever. Verizon's Galaxy S3 finally got Android 4.1, and there was rejoicement in the streets. I mean, this one crazy dude, you know, went outside screaming and hollering and everything like that. Then he came back inside and filmed this video. But you know, I mean, it was a lot of just emotion in it, because, you know, every single other carrier, major carrier, had Android 4.1 for at least about 3 weeks to a month, and Verizon didn't. So Verizon finally has it, and we're happy about it. Android 4.1 did make the phone much faster, and we appreciate that. And brought Google Now, which is just amazing. To have that on my main phone is just like nothing else. If you haven't used Google Now, you should use it. Watch my videos on Android 1.0. It's just amazing. Google Now is a great tool. Speaking of Google, Google's main source of income comes from ads. Excuse me. Which, you know, they've had trouble and complaints from users on Android from accidentally clicking an ad sometimes when it's on the bottom. So what Google is revamping, I believe this is only going to be on Android 4.0 and newer, just FYI. But what they're doing now is, so the people that accidentally click the ad on the bottom, they will have a pop-up on that banner saying, do you want to visit this site? So that way you don't accidentally click the link on the bottom, and it's kind of like, are you sure you want to go there? And that's the highlight of this, that, you know, which I think is really good. They're making sure that that's what you do want to do. And on some very sad news, and I know there's always a lot of joking around when it comes to Apple and Foxconn, but these are one of these really depressing articles that it really just gets me mad at Apple, and I really can't stand them as a company for allowing this kind of stuff. And that is, to meet the iPhone 5 demand, Foxconn has hired workers to live in dorms with no electricity and to barely have running water. So, I think this is just really, really bad. It's really bad. I mean, I just, you know, it's really bad, and the fact that, you know, Apple just can't cut a little bit into their profit margin just to make these situations livable. I mean, yes, they are the biggest employer to Foxconn. So if they made demands, Foxconn would easily fall in line, but they're not making these demands, and I think this is just really horrible. And the fact that, you know, they don't have electricity, barely getting running water in some parts, and no elevators as well. They have to use stairs in these dorms. It's really bad, and I think that Apple needs to step up as a company, and that's just, in all seriousness, they really do. In a lighter note with Apple, analysts are now saying Apple iPhone 5, game over. This comes from the continuing fall of stock. It went back up for a little bit and then it went right back down. Basically, now nearing the low 500s. I did not check the stock before I did this, so it could be different. But basically, a couple days ago, it went to the low 500s because they were only able to sell 2 million iPhone 5s with entering into China. Now, although 2 million might sound like a lot, it's really nothing compared to other sales figures that other phones launch at there. Not to mention that, that China is such a huge market that, with billions of people, 2 million is really nothing. And it was underwhelming, to say the least. It was basically, it fell into the category, depending on what analyst you read, under so-so or below average. So it really wasn't that impressive, and that's why they dropped. I think their stock, it's the steepest drop their stock has had since 1988. Keep in mind that that was the beginning of Apple's turn towards bankruptcy at that time. So yeah, it's the steepest drop they've ever had since then, and it's just showing that because the iPhone 5, underwhelming, that it has been game over for Apple. And I wouldn't give it all the credit. I would say the iPad mini was part of the fault too. But going to prepaid, the iPhone 5 being underwhelming, and the iPad mini cutting their margin in half to the iPad, I think all have been key factors in the downfall of Apple this year. So that is, again, just Apple's not doing well. Now, other companies are trying to do different tactics to take on Google, and one of them is Microsoft. Microsoft has a Scroogled campaign combining the Scrooge and Google, saying, and they've had this campaign where basically they're trying to say, oh, well, if you're trying to buy something, Google will put, this bag as a featured bag, so that, because they get paid for it. Yes, and then you can just categorize from lowest to highest and be done with it if you want to go by price. Or if you want to go by color, you can filter that. You can filter whatever you want in Google. That's what makes it so great. Who cares about the featured ones? But the thing is that this article is saying that the Scroogled campaign is just the beginning, and the kitchen sink is on the way. Being that they're going to basically try to throw everything and the kitchen sink at Google to try to take them down. And all I have to say is, Microsoft, your ads are lackluster at best. And so far I haven't seen any advertisement come out of Microsoft that really is great. Your Surface tablet ads were pathetic at best. And honestly, instead of the whole click thing, you should have just talked about Microsoft Office going free on your device. You would have easily sold 1 million more units. So whoever's ever doing your advertising, you should probably fire them. And so speaking of actual successful campaigns and ads, Samsung has, it looks like, according to everything going in, that they have finally taken the #1 spot on total cell phones sold in 2012 away from Nokia. Now this is huge because Samsung has long won over smartphones, okay? Samsung has been the top smartphone manufacturer for over a year now, which they won last year, actually. They won last year in 2011, at the end of 2011. And now at the end of 2012, they have now come and not only been the best smartphone maker, but they've been the best phone maker, total, which is really accredited to their smartphone sales as well. So last year, this time, in total phone sales, 30% went to Nokia, and 24% went to Samsung, 7% went to Apple. However, this year, 29% went to Samsung, and Nokia got 24%, so almost they switched entirely on their numbers. And Apple did move up to 10%. So, in total smartphones, however, we saw a huge difference. So last year, Samsung was at 20%, Apple was right behind them at 19%, and Nokia had finally fallen off of the number one in that to 16%. However, this year, Samsung went from 20% to 28%, so growing 8% in market share in terms of smartphones, whereas Apple only grew 1%. They went from 19 to 20, so 8% versus 1% obviously shows you how many sales of smartphones that differed between the two companies. Nokia dropped all the way to 5%, so from 16 to 5%, dropping 11% is a really huge dip. So Samsung is now the dominating force in cell phones pretty much all around. Whether it be smartphone or feature phone, it owns the market, which is really impressive to say the least for one company to do that. And for one company to have so much growth compared to the others is again really huge. I feel that they are 5% away from the top spot on the market share for all phones total, and they are 8% to their closest person on smartphones. So that's really impressive. And Google Music. Google Music is now offering Scan and Match in the US stores. So if you've never heard of what Scan and Match does, Apple has this thing called, I think it's called Apple Match or iTunes Match, and Amazon has this feature too. But you have to pay, I think, like $25 for a year to use it. So what this feature does is basically, when you're going to upload your songs to Google Music or to any of the other services, it scans all of your music and sees which ones they have in their own database already, so that it cuts the upload time in half or to nothing. Because if all of your songs are in their database, then you're not uploading anything, they just take it from their server. So, which is really nice, of course, because your upload time is nothing really, and not to mention that you have higher quality music. Google does use, I think it's 320 if I'm not mistaken. The sound quality is just basically a lot better in comparison. So it keeps the best sound quality out there, even better than iTunes. And Amazon has it for about, I think, half of their songs, that kind of sound quality, and half they don't. So really, really good sound quality. And the biggest part about it is that it is free for their first 20,000 songs, which, as we know, Google gives you 20,000 songs for free anyway. So if you upload your full 20,000 songs for free, you never have to pay for anything, which is really cool. So it's great to say the least, and the fact that they're doing it for free just shows how amazing Google really is for customer service. Alright, so the Samsung trial. Now remember, I've told you guys before, there is multiple Samsung trials. This was the first one that finished in September, and it's still going on today. So even though it finished, it didn't really finish. Now the judge is hearing it and making her, case, basically her judgment, as you will. And this can still be appealed, which it will be, to be honest. I mean, it matters, but it doesn't matter that much because this will be appealed. Whatever happens, it will be appealed, either by Samsung or by Apple. So, the judge kind of shot down both Apple and Samsung. So both had something bad and good happen to them. So the judge shot down Apple's request for a ban. So no Samsung phones will be banned. Remember, one key thing about this trial, it only had the S2. It did not have the S3, the Note, or the Note 2. It was up to the S2 and everything older than that. So keep in mind that. For this trial, for the new trials, they'll be the S3, the Note 2, and all of those phones. Also, Samsung's motion for a new trial was denied as well. So obviously, Samsung's happy that none of their phones got banned, but Apple's happy that there will not be a new trial for this case from this judge. Again, it will go to appeals court, and then there'll be a new trial, but with this judge, with this case, there will not be a new motion for a brand new trial from her. Probably just because she's sick of it. That is what happened, and we will see, again, what kind of things come of this. Will Apple get awarded the $1.05 billion? No. The main patent that won them a lot of money has now been considered invalid in the U.S., which was the quote-unquote bounce patent, that when you scroll all the way up it bounces. That's now considered invalid in the U.S. since the September trial. So, sorry, that will no longer be on there, so it'll be interesting to see what the money result is. And Samsung had 2 leaks today come out. One was a really nice looking audio dock. It's basically kind of like a perfect bed for your phone, and you just sit it on there. And now, what's unclear or kind of rumored at this point is that how will it be used? So there is a Bluetooth function, but there's also a micro USB, and micro USB audio should be supported for every 4.1 device and newer. That is one of the changes that happened with Jelly Bean. I believe it was 4.1. I don't believe it was 4.2, although I could be wrong about that. Off the top of my head, I knew it was Jelly Bean, but I don't remember if it was 4.1 or 4.2. I think it was 4.1, but that was an upgrade that they did so that it had the software to back up the hardware to use micro USB as an out towards it. It was 4.1 actually, now I just remembered. So it's unclear whether, say if you have an S3 or a Note 2 with 4.1, when you dock it, will sound just come out, or will you still need to use Bluetooth like a lot of the Philips ones and other things? So that's interesting, but I really like the look of it. I can definitely see myself buying this, and yeah, I'm really interested. The kind of curiosity of this is obviously pricing, and second thing is, will we see it at CES or will we see it at MWC? CES is in January, and MWC is in late February or March, I believe. And then on the last article for the night, we have a new phone from Samsung, the Samsung Galaxy Grand. And this is a really interesting phone. So this was a phone that, you know, we heard rumor mills about us having like a lower end Note device. So kind of like, you know, a bigger screen, but still have a lot of cool features. And this could be it. But the main thing is that it is a 5-inch screen, so it's in between the Galaxy S3 and the Note 2. And the resolution is only so-so. That's the downside of it. The resolution is kind of so-so. It's 800 by 480, so, you know, 480p but not 720p. But it does have Android 4.1.2, so one of the latest versions of Android. Not the latest, but one of the latest. It has a dual-core 1.2 gigahertz processor, which is unspecified, which is most likely a Snapdragon Qualcomm. It does have one really exciting feature that I really like, and that is multi-window mode, or multi-view, which is the correct term for it, and that is that you can have 2 apps open at the same time, a feature that is only on currently the Note 2, but that we've seen footage with Samsung's premium suite for the S3 that it might get it as well. It does have an 8 megapixel camera, 2 megapixel on the front, 2100 milliamp battery, so the same as the S3, 8 gigs built-in storage, and 64 gig expandability. Now, so far this is only a HSPA Plus model, so we don't know if it will come to the US or if it will just be HSPA Plus, or if there will be an LTE version. That will most likely be seen at CES. But the nice part about it is a dual SIM card phone, so you can have 2 SIM cards inside of it, which is really nice for people to travel. So yeah, guys, that is the Samsung Galaxy Grand. Hope you guys enjoyed the articles. Are you guys excited about the holidays? I hope you are, and I hope you have some great holidays. So have a good time, have a lot of fun, and, you know, bingo all the way. Sorry, CKY, the Android guy.